What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of SSPN Live. I'm Jude, that's Ethan, and we appreciate you guys being here with us to talk some Spurs tonight. And Ethan, it's actually, we have a win to talk about over the weekend. Are you surprised?
I low-key am, if I'm being completely honest with you, Jude.
Me too. I will say I'm a little bit less surprised considering that Ja Morant did not play in that Memphis game where the Spurs got the 130 to 128 win. But still, going into the weekend, Ethan, it seemed like there was going to be no chance of having competitive games or a win. And we did get some competitiveness in that OKC game, as much as the fourth quarter was. We'll get into that later. But Spurs went 1-1 this weekend, but that wasn't the only news that happened over the past couple of days, because today it was announced that the San Antonio Spurs have officially signed Bismack Biyombo for the rest of the season. This isn't really breaking news or unexpected, but what were your thoughts on Bismack being signed for the rest of the year, Ethan? And I think the bigger question that I have, do you think he has a future in San Antonio after this season?
I'm going to say no, unless it's a Gorgie situation where we just suddenly have him in the front office. But I don't think that that's going to happen either. I think he's just a temporary solution, Jude, if I'm being 100% honest with you. I am pleased that he got the standard contract for the rest of the year because he hasn't been earth-shattering, but he's been exactly what we wanted. And it's a high IQ big that can be physical, get rebounds, get a couple high opportune second chance points here and there. That's really all he's doing. He's not going to push them into the playoffs. But I think if we had Wemby and he was our current backup center, maybe we have a chance to sneak into the play-in because he has been pretty solid for us as really our only 7-footer, our only true center on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kind of like you said, we just needed him to fill this need this season with Victor being out for the year. So I guess what I would say is I think there's a percentage chance. Like, I think the Spurs are open to the idea of maybe bringing him back as a third string center, or maybe even somebody to just kind of coach up whoever we pick in the draft, if that ends up happening. But with that being said, Ethan, I don't think that it is like a 100% chance that he's coming back next season by any means. And I definitely get your sentiment because I think we could probably get an upgrade in free agency and the draft. And if I'm being honest, that's probably rather what I do. But if they really like Gorgie's demeanor and he really meshes with the team and the culture and everything like that, I could see the Spurs.
You said Gorgie. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. I can't believe they're so similar. Except Bismack's playing a little bit more than Gorgie did right now.
Better, honestly.
But yeah, going back to Bismack, excuse me. Yeah, like I said, maybe there's a chance that they would want to bring him back as a third string big or somebody to bring along the next guy. But I would rather spend our cap money on somebody else that's a little bit younger, maybe has a little bit more size. And then we can still, kind of bring somebody along in the draft.
I'm pretty sure, I know it's probably not guaranteed, but we still have Chuck Bass under contract as well, right? Like, so he could very well be the third stringer next year, and we just draft or sign a better backup, ideally.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is we love our boy Charles. We just, with the injury history, I think even right now, I don't know, I might go with Bismack over him if Bismack's going to play. You know what I mean? But like you said, if they truly believe in Charles, we do still have that team option. So maybe he does come back for another year. With the injuries, I'm not sure, but I don't know. Maybe he'll play at more at the end of this season because he was in the picture today, of the roster. And obviously he's on the roster, so he's going to be on the team roster picture. But it doesn't seem like this is like they haven't announced that this is a season ending injury. So maybe there's a chance he still plays this season.
We will have to see.
But yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway, Ethan, is probably the rest of these games will determine what happens with both
regardless of like one of them will be our third string, probably. We just hope we get a better backup center. Let's make that the final statement.
For sure. But going back to this weekend, Ethan, as we mentioned, the Spurs did get a win. They are 23, if I'm remembering correctly. No, I am so wrong. 25 and 34 now officially. And that puts the Spurs as the third worst team in the Western Conference. Let me double check the standings. That is
Mhm.
what I saw last night. But no, that is still the case with just the New Orleans Pelicans and the Utah Jazz below us. And Ethan and I were talking about this before the stream started. And essentially, just thinking about this, when I saw that the Spurs were in the bottom three of the West, it made me think about the bottom three top percentage odds that we've been trying to get for the past 2 seasons. And obviously, while that is not the case for the Spurs, they are still going to be heavily
Mm.
involved in the lottery, not just with their own pick, but also potentially with Atlanta, although Atlanta is in the play-in as of right now, but we'll have to see how the rest of the season pans out. It looks like they're pretty securely in it, but if they don't make the playoffs, I believe they would still end up being a lottery pick. So with all of that being said, Ethan, we are getting closer and closer to when those standings will be concrete and we will have a vision of what this Spurs draft is going to look like.
It kind of goes against everything that I've been saying all year round, Jude, but please let's start losing some of these games. I love that we're being competitive. Like we beat Memphis and that felt
Yeah.
good because it's Memphis. We kind of have a rivalry with them and their players are, they talk a lot, they're physical. So that one felt good. But for the reality of the situation, we need the best pick that we could possibly get. So let's lose some games and hope the guys under us can start winning some. But either way, lottery is definitely, like you said, in our future.
Jay says, I feel like the Spurs will get the 11th pick and the Hawks will get the 15th. And that's honestly probably a
Yeah.
really realistic thing. But hopefully, like you said, maybe we can have some games like last night where we're competitive, for most of it, and then unfortunately the fourth quarter just happens. And as much as we don't want to promote losing, I mean, think about what we were talking about when the De'Aaron Fox trade happened.
Hmm.
Like it's like our dude has changed so much, but because there's so much potential next season, it's like you want to set yourself up the best you
Right.
can. So it's a total 180 in our mentality shift over the past couple of weeks, but that's kind of what happens when Victor Wembanyama gets hurt.
Sorry, I don't know if you saw that. My cat literally
Oh,
stepped
I did.
stepped on my keyboard and changed what I was looking at. But I heard what you said, and I'm with you,
Winky
Jude.
Winky had to announce himself. He had to say, "Hey, there's an open roster spot. You need a backup center. I'm physical and I'm
He's a
disruptive."
big Matt Bonner fan. He's a ginger, loves the Red Rocket.
There,
Uh, yeah.
there you go. Lost you for a second
Sorry.
there, Ethan, but I think we got you back. You're good. Jay says, "Could you see the Spurs trade up?" So, what are your thoughts
I
on this,
would
Ethan?
if the Spurs make a trade, I would actually see them trading down or trying to trade for a role player of some kind. Kind of like what we did this past season when we had the 8th pick and the 4th pick. We traded the 8th pick not for a player but for a future pick. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, but I think about all kinds of trade rumors right now. With we don't have to get into it, but big superstars and guys that are unhappy where they
Yeah,
are. Maybe this could be something we include in that. But we also are in a position, right, where we're trying to make a push for the playoffs next year. We're trying to be competitive, and maybe we can package that second first round pick and maybe something else and try and get a quality. Everyone wants a 3-and-D wing. Get a 3-and-D wing with that 15th pick that can impact winning now. I could see the Spurs doing something like that.
I hate to give a generic answer here, but it depends on what the Spurs front office wants to
It's
do.
fair.
Because if there's a player if there's a player that they really like in the top 10 or like the 6 and 7 range,
Maybe.
or maybe even like the 4 pick, you know what I mean? They could package both of those picks and move up and be like, "Hey, we really want this, this Duke center that everybody's
Right.
been talking about." I'm just throwing that out. Ethan and I have not dove into the draft yet, and we probably won't until the end of the season. So I'm very ignorant on most of the class as of right now. I do know obviously Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, I think is
Hmm.
another name. The guy from Rutgers, Ace
Yep.
Bailey. Anyways, so like I know the names, but we haven't really dove into them yet. So forgive us for our ignorance there. But if there is a big that we just really like and the Spurs are sold on, maybe they
Hmm.
could do that. But also, again, it's not to be like high variance guy here, even though that's exactly what I'm being. But I think with the Spurs, you just
Hmm.
never know, dude. Like I could see them moving back if they feel like, that there's, they could get a role player or something and they could acquire more assets down the line. But honestly, I think what I would say just when it comes to the draft trade, if I had to give a prediction here right now in March, or not a prediction, but just what I think is most likely to happen if we were to make a trade, I would say it's for somebody outside of the Spurs. Like you said, bringing in a role player or bringing in, another player from a different
Hmm.
team. Um, but I'm very open to using both of our draft picks as well. I'm kind of saying I'm open to everything,
Yeah.
but I,
Oh,
I kind of
I
am.
think we're both in that same boat, and honestly, another element of this that we always forget to talk about isn't 2K Trade Finder. It really depends on who has those
Uh-huh.
picks. Like, it doesn't matter if, like, oh, we really wanna move up to 7, if the guy at 7 has no interest in moving away, or he's interested in that same Duke center, right, theoretically. So it depends on those teams, it depends on how the golf balls fall, but, I think, honestly, everything is on the table for the Spurs.
Yeah, 100%. I thought Jay brought up a good name in Liam
Great guy.
McNeely from UConn. I believe he's a wing that can shoot and also has some defensive potential on top of, having that UConn connection with Steph Castle. They may not have played together, but still, we know what those Dan Hurley boys bring to the table. Um, so I would definitely be open to that. But again, we'll get into the draft later. That's our little March 3rd
Mhm.
draft preview. We still got a long ways to go before that happens. But Michael Hunt in the comments. He's still using the at fellas. He's used this ever since we said
I
we
do like
liked it.
that.
So shout out to you, my guy. He says Steph Castle is going to be one of the best combo guards we have had in decades. Don't get me
Mm.
started, Michael. Um, I don't want to jump into player evals, but I think that kind of is the next thing that we have on the docket here. So, you know what? We are going to get started on it, Ethan, and we'll start with Stephon Castle, who had a stellar performance last night and a stellar performance against Memphis. Let me go ahead and pull up his game log and his stats here. And, you got to watch that Memphis game full through, Ethan. I did not. I did get to catch the Oklahoma City game. Um, so give me your thoughts on Stephon Castle's weekend. He was our leading scorer in both games. And man, he's just, as soon as we talked about a slump last week, this is what we
Yeah,
get.
he's been on the uptick since everybody was talking about his slump for sure. He took that personally. I mean, I'm at the point, Jude, where the only reason I'm really watching these games is because I know Stephon Castle's that
Yeah.
first guy off the bench. And he had 32 minutes against Memphis. He was great, really, from start to finish with the 24.7 assists, 3 rebounds. Hit all of his free throws, which I love, 6 for 6. He continues to look more and more confident from there, which will prove to be worthwhile when it comes to his 3-point shot, which is also improving. He was 2 for 6 against Memphis in that game, 50% overall from the floor. And what I love about him is he just completely controls the tempo of the game. Anybody that was worried about him
Hmm.
being a ball dominant point guard because of what he was doing at UConn these past few games, I think he's really solidified himself as a true future point guard. And he can play both. He can play off De'Aaron Fox. We saw that in the second half when we didn't really play Chris Paul in that fourth quarter. You were texting me about that. And I think it really came down to defensive matchups. Steph Castle was doing a
Uh-huh.
great job defensively, and Chris Paul, love him, floor general. He's not the guy you want when you're playing athletic, tall, strong players like the Memphis Grizzlies, who have Scottie Pippen Jr., John Conchar, Jalen Wells, just to name a few guys. And we were switching most things because that's just what you have to do against a team like Memphis. And Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, they were playing really, really well off of each other. So I got nothing but positives to say, honestly. I don't have a negative. If you want to point to something, uh, I mean, maybe he could be more efficient from three, just in general. But he's starting to really cook. Other than that, because I trust him low key. I trust him more than I trust De'Aaron Fox, who hit the shot to win the game against Memphis in the fourth quarter, Mister Clutch. But in the first 3 quarters, I'd rather have Stephon Castle out there low key. If I'm being honest with you.
Dude, I just think it's funny how you were like, "Pfft, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's 3-point shooting because that's
Mhm.
how it's been. I mean, look at this. And yes, you could maybe point to some inefficiency, but it's like you got to think about him being a rookie too. But 3 straight games with 22 plus points. I mean, even in the Rockets game when he didn't shoot efficient, still 5 assists, 7 boards, 3 steals. Had a steal in the Memphis game as well with 7 assists and 3 boards. 8 boards in the OKC game. That's important
Yep.
against OKC. 3 assists, 4 for 10 from three. I mean, that's a solid percent. Think about if you would have told me that like his jumper would have been looking the way that it
I
looks
wouldn't have
right
believed you.
now in December or November, me either. Going and I know that's high volume and it's still like he missed 6 and he made 4, but again, 40% in the NBA, especially when you take into account the context of Stephon Castle's jump shot coming into the season. Um, this is a pretty solid. I don't mean to make everything about this last game and be the 4 for 10, but genuinely, like him making efficient an efficient number of threes on a high
Mhm.
volume is just a testament to his development.
Yeah, and I didn't even talk about his OKC game, which you kinda touched on there, and it's the confidence that he was able to play against the number 1 defensive team in the league.
He kept us in
He's
the
the only
game.
reason in that second half that we had a shot. In that first half, everybody was shooting well. I think we hit, what was it, 16 threes in that first half, and maybe we hit 1 in the second half. Like, it was that drastic of a drop off. Like, it looked like we were head and shoulders over OKC. They were seeing ghosts. They had no idea we could shoot that well. And then reality set in, and everybody stopped shooting that well in the second half. But
Yeah.
Steph Castle was just so physical, and he pushed the tempo, and he was getting in the paint, getting 2 feet in the lane and kicking out or making tough shots, like acrobatic layups.
Mhm.
Like, we all knew he was physical. We all knew he could dunk and finish strong, but it's the finesse too, which I didn't know
Mhm.
he had.
Yeah.
Um, uh, uh,
Oh my gosh. Last
oh
night,
yeah,
that up and under, I think it was late in the game, you know what I'm
He
talking
also
about?
crossed up Isaiah Hartenstein, who I love, made him low key. He broke his ankles. I mean, it was small, but it was a tough pullback mid range jumper, which he hit. A lot of guys miss those shots after kind of feeling the energy of crossing somebody up like that. But he stays cool, calm, and collected, and he's a dog, man. We saw him fight low key
Mhm.
in the Memphis game
Yeah.
with Zach Edey. They still have that rivalry, but he was not going to just give that ball up to the big, and I like to see that from your guard, especially at this age. Like, I'm just so blown away by his poise. And we all knew he was going to be good, but not this good, this quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just looking down at some of these scores, like, trying to get, just remind myself, you know, you could say in January, maybe he had a little bit of a drop off in points. And let's see, what was the average there? It was 10, right? And then jump back up to 15. We mentioned this last episode, but I mean, man, looking at this, I mean, basically since, like, I know there's some games in there here and there, but kind of since this Memphis game on the 15th of January, it has just been, like I said, you've got a handful of other ones in there, but it's been double digits every game and a lot of 20 plus point games and multiple 30 plus point games as well.
I could make the argument that since the end of December, Jude, since that Indiana game
Hmm.
where he had 17, he's been really good other than 3 games. And there was the 2 against New Orleans last week, and then where is it? The one against Phoenix 2 weeks ago. And he still
Hmm.
managed to get 10 boards in that game. He was just really inefficient.
Yeah,
So
and that was big with Wemby being
he's
out too.
impacting the scoreboard in more ways than one. He's extremely versatile. He could play off the guard. He could play as the ball dominant guy. This I think we may have found our second best player when it comes to, like, winning championships down the line in 3 or
No, I
4
mean,
years, maybe 5 years, if we wanna be
it's exactly what I thought last
this is
night
our
to
guy.
myself. Yeah. And what you say about De'Aaron, I don't want to overblow this because obviously, like, De'Aaron is at a completely different place, like,
Yeah.
in his career. You know what I mean? And I think we can have an objective conversation that Stephon Castle's ceiling could be higher. But still, as of right now, he's 20 years old. Like, De'Aaron Fox is still
Right.
De'Aaron Fox. But when you talk about impacting winning, I in my mind, like, I feel like he does that the most out of everyone on the team other than Wemby. And that's not a diss to De'Aaron. It's just all of the other things that Stephon does on top of scoring,
Yeah.
as well as the physical presence that he has. Like, I mean, if we're being honest, like, and I know I was given, like, I want to give De'Aaron Fox's defense credit. I know I was talking about that, and there was the whole thing with Chris Paul that we talked about a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago. But Stephon Castle's defense,
Elite.
I feel like it's better on the ball than De'Aaron's
Yeah.
right now.
I would the eye test 100%.
And De'Aaron's not
No,
bad.
he's good. He's a good defender. But Steph
Yeah.
Castle, man, he's got the potential to be a defensive first or second team guy for multiple years by when it's all said and done.
Yeah. And with the shooting progression that we've seen this season, if that continues, this
Mhm.
is it's Area
It's
51
Area
is what it is.
51. And I also wanna just make this point too real quick before we finish with Stephon Castle.
Mhm.
I did say that I trust him, like, sometimes more than De'Aaron Fox at this point. I do agree with you, though. De'Aaron Fox is the best player on the court for us right now, 100%.
Mhm.
And honestly, Devin Vassell should be our second best player right now. He's a little up and down.
But
He
he's
had a
not.
great first half against Memphis, tailed off significantly in the second half, and kind of the same story against OKC for Devin as
Yeah.
well. So I don't know. Stephon Castle's right there, and he's a rookie. So give him a few seasons and few off seasons. He's going to be that guy.
Yeah. Ethan, do you remember the shirt, the branded shirt when we were in school that Texas State's basketball team used? Like it was like our freshman year. Or I don't know. You graduated a year after me, so you might have not been here for this. Do you remember the Takers shirts?
Mm-mm. I came in a year after you, so
No,
I don't
okay.
remember
That
that.
was that yeah. I think that was my freshman year. Anyways, the whole point I'm bringing this up is the Texas State basketball team in 2018, 2019, their motto was takers, and they wore these shirts like that said takers, like they went out and took stuff. Anyways, Stephon
Mhm.
embodies that motto like 100%. So, anyways, that's how I feel. That I feel like that's the mentality that he has when he gets
Mhm.
on the floor. Like he's a taker. He's gonna go get what's his, you
For
know.
sure. And he had every reason when we drafted him to pout or play poorly and had excuses like ready to go if he wanted them. Like his excuse could be like, "Oh, I'm just not a great shooter right now, but I'll be there eventually." Or you have Chris Paul as your starting point guard. You traded for De'Aaron Fox. You have Devin Vassell.
I'm learning to play
Right,
with
like I'm not
Wemby.
getting enough minutes or touches to play like my real way. But he hasn't done any of that, and he has been successful as a fill-in starter when people were injured,
Uh
as
huh.
the sixth man basically, and as like a starting like he's succeeded in every position that we've put him in, despite the situation. Doesn't matter who's playing. Stephon Castle's going to be Stephon Castle, and that's what I like about him. Like sometimes for the other guys, you can say like, like everyone Wemby
Hmm.
played poorly, therefore Devin or Keldon's also going to play poorly. Like you can make those assessments. If Wemby's not playing, you still know
Hmm.
Stephon Castle's going to do what he does, and that's what separates him.
I know I took my headphones off there, but I actually
Mm,
could still hear you. And I completely agree with all of your sentiment. And our guy Michael Hunt is in the comments. He had a comment earlier that I want to get to, but Michael, we're going to save that for the end because we want to get through these player evals. But at the end of the episode, we'll kind of finish up with some of the stuff that we missed in the Q&A. But I do want to bring up some of the stuff that he just mentioned on Castle here. He says it's his physicality with all the Euro steps and
mm,
inverted Euros, and the offense, rebounding, and putbacks, and saving the ball out of bounds to a teammate. He just
mhm,
knows how to win. Definitely has the effort plays 1000%. Here's also what Michael says: Wemby, Jeremy, Fox, Steph, in that order for me, make the most winning plays on the team. And guess what? That's our
mhm.
core. I left Jeremy out, and I think that's a great, that when we talk about
Yep.
impacting winning, the things that Stephon and Jeremy do aside from scoring are very similar.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't because I didn't find like a good opening for it. Not to, I mean, I was actually. I'm not lying. Uh, Stephon
Oddly.
Castle does a lot of the same positives as Jeremy Sohan. Just he has the potential to be a higher volume scorer, and he does it in a
And a
better
better
ball
ball
handler. And
handler.
he has the ball in his hands, and it's prettier when he does it. Therefore, it looks sexier, for a lack of a better word. Like when Jeremy does, even when Jeremy succeeds, it kind of looks a little bit more effortful than when Stephon Castle does it.
It looks ugly for Jeremy, and it looks pretty for Stephon. I hate to put it that way. That doesn't mean that ugly isn't
No.
effective. And look, bro, Jeremy, I'll tell you a story. That if some of my friends come and watch this, they're gonna die so hard if they listen to this. But anyways, that's out of context. But on New Year's, me and my buddies had an annual New Year's Eve basketball game, like pickup
Mhm.
basketball game, right? And I told them before the game, I'm going to play exactly like
Mhm.
Jeremy because that's how I play in pickup. And that was what I was getting to. It's not ugly, but it's effective. Or it's not pretty. It's ugly, but it's
Every team
effective.
needs that guy. And he's another one. We don't have his
Hmm.
stats up, but he had 18, 11, and 3 against Memphis,
We're going to get
17,
to
4, and
him.
4 against
Yeah.
OKC. He's been playing very well.
Let's go ahead and get to him. I know we were talking about Devin earlier, so I thought we might go with him first, but we'll go ahead and go with Jeremy just since it kind of led right into it there. And I think somebody else just left a comment kind of about the way that Jeremy's been playing. And dude, like, look, we pull this up, Ethan. He's still
Mhm.
21.
Still very young. Still a lot of time for him to evolve. I think what's he shooting from 3? 34% so far this year, if I'm not mistaken. Let me confirm that before people scream at me. Yeah, 34%. And half
Wow. And I know that's low volume,
half
but
as many
still.
attempts as last year, but last year he shot 30%. So he's on the uptick and it looks better. It looks smoother. And he's taking them when he's open, but he's not forcing them either, which I like. So he's only going to continue to get better. And I think his ball handling looks better. I think his playmaking is more solid. I think he's averaging less turnovers as well compared to the last 2 years. Let me confirm that so I don't get yelled at. It's about even. It's like point 0.3 less than last year, but still, I think anyone that's watching these games cannot argue with our point that he looks better. He's way more efficient as a scorer, and he's not rushing or forcing things. And part of that's probably due to him just playing his natural position, Jude.
Yeah. This weekend was nice to see from Jeremy because this is Jeremy. I mean, I was going to say at his best, but really at his best is him next to a
Mhm.
center, which is what we saw at the
Yep.
beginning of this season. But still, in the circumstances that Jeremy is under right now, what we saw this weekend is peak Jeremy. And it's just him busting his ass for rebounds, getting scores on cleanups and putbacks. The jumper's ugly, but it's going in more. Like you said, yes, he's taking it less, but do we really want Jeremy Sochan to be taking more threes? No, especially when you add CP3 and Harrison Barnes and Steph Castle for
Mhm.
that matter, and De'Aaron Fox. Let me throw that in too. Like you want all of those guys taking threes over Jeremy. And that's not to say that he still can't take them from time to time. Like we saw, he made one in each game this weekend. But Jeremy is a Swiss Army knife four. Like that's
Mhm.
what he is. I just want him to be in that position again. But the fact that he's able to put up these numbers and play the way he's playing and, still have the hustle and everything that he has, I can't really ask for more from him from other than what I saw this weekend as of right now. Yes, there are things that Jeremy needs to continue to improve on in his career. He would agree with that. But he's 21,
Mhm. He
dude.
has
Like
time.
I really still, it's crazy, Ethan. I'm going to bring up something that we haven't brought up since like 2021, 2022. This is like
Okay.
pre-Wemby talk. Okay. We were talking about how Jeremy could maybe have like when we first drafted him, could maybe have like a Kawhi. Now, when I say Kawhi and Giannis, like I'm not saying he's going to be those two guys or a combination of those two guys because that's a Hall of Famer. And I'm not saying that he won't be either, but I'm just saying like I'm not saying he's going to be some mega all-star. But I think long term, Jeremy can continue to get better and better. Like in the sense that, like
Mhm.
Giannis did. You know what I mean? Or what's a better example than Kawhi or who I
Giannis.
was just mentioning? Laurie Markkinen. Laurie Markkinen is a better example than Giannis or Kawhi. Let me put it that way. That's what I think. And I think Jeremy, you're already seeing him impact things a little bit more earlier in his career than
Mm.
Laurie did. And I know they're different players whenever it comes to their play style, but from a progression and development standpoint, I think Jeremy could be on a similar
Mm.
timeline.
No, I could see that for sure. A name I always brought up when we first drafted him was Scottie Pippen. I don't know if that's in the cards anymore. Um, I just think he would need a different role on the team. I think we're kind of niching
Yeah.
him into a more of a Draymond role, which I think fits him
Yes.
very well. Now, hopefully, he will be a better scorer long term than Draymond. But as far as being a defensive menace, a guy that just gets open looks for the actual scorers on the team, Wemby, Steph, De'Aaron. I think the last 2 games really that's where he is at his best, like you're saying. I will also say I think the rotations did him a disservice in January, February, where he only averaged 20 minutes a game. I know he
Yeah.
wasn't shooting great from three or from the free throw line, but despite that, he was efficient from the floor. He was getting rebounds, and he plays really well next to Wemby, who was playing at the time. So I'm not sure where the thought process was in that low key demotion because he was averaging 29 and 30 plus minutes prior to that, and maybe it has something to do with his injury too, kind of nagging at
That's what I
him.
was gonna say. Was that around the injury maybe? Because remember there were 2 stints that he had this
Yeah,
season where he was out for a little bit and they kinda had to ease him back into
maybe that's the
minutes.
only. If that's the case, then I get it. But I think that
Right.
either way, that kind of hurt what people that just watch the box score, that hurt their opinion of Jeremy a little bit in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
But hopefully, because he got 30 against Memphis and 25 against OKC. Hopefully, that means he's getting heavier minutes long term for the rest of the year. Um, and I think we'll start to see more of an impact from him statistically.
Yeah. I would like to think that the Memphis game is an indication of that. Um, I would also like to think that the OKC game is an indication of that. But the reason I bring up the Memphis one more is not just because it was a win, but because we only really played 8 guys. Like I think, when we're getting blown out, we'll throw in, Mamu, Blake, and
Mhm.
Malachi. But in the Memphis game, like that's like our legit rotation for the rest of the year, the 9-man rotation with him. Um, so I hope they give him those minutes moving forward.
I do have to use the restroom, Jude. Do you mind if I jump real quick?
Go for it. Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
You go for it. Alrighty. So it's just going to be me and you guys hanging out with us now. So I might as well get back to Michael Hunt's question earlier. And I really want to get Ethan's opinion on this. But he said, at fellas, would you trade those two first for KD for 2 seasons? I had not thought about this. I had been seeing, obviously, all of the stuff that has to do with Kevin Durant and him, essentially kind of they've already agreed that he's going to get traded this offseason, and that he will no longer be a Phoenix Sun essentially after this season. Ethan sent me a text there, guys. I thought he was letting me know of some news, but he just said sorry, brother. So I got distracted. But this is a legit thing, and this is kind of what I was talking about. And when I say legit thing, I don't mean like there's any smoke. Obviously, we got to wait and see what happens with the draft. But the Spurs are one of the teams that do have the draft capital to acquire somebody like that. And not even just the draft capital. Maybe if we still keep seeing struggles from Devin Vassell throughout this season, maybe he even gets thrown in a trade as well. So I definitely think that the Spurs have a lot of options. Again, was texting Ethan there. Sorry to get distracted a little bit for you there. But yeah, I would definitely be open to it. But again, there's just so many things that we're gonna have to wait and see how they play out. But if the Spurs were gonna bring in a super team with De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Durant, and everybody else that we've acquired, like a Stephon Castle, and maybe even bringing Harrison Barnes back next season, we'll see what the roster looks like. I definitely would be open to that. So what I was talking about when you were gone, Ethan, was this question here from Michael Hunt. He said, "Would you trade those two firsts for KD for 2 seasons?" And I hadn't thought about that, Ethan. And I already kind of gave my spiel, so I don't want to repeat it for everybody else who's already been listening. But just with it being a legit possibility that he's going to get moved this summer, and us having the capital as well as potential assets, I mentioned to Devin Vassell when you were gone, if he continues to play the way that he has, would that be something that you're open to?
Yes, I am completely open to that. For a couple reasons. One, I do think we're going to be more competitive next year. I think the goal will be playoffs, not just play in, but playoffs. So the idea that we need to play it
Yeah.
super slow and keep to not great lottery picks, but I mean they're lottery picks, so they're good, but they're not like top 5 picks potentially. And we get a perennial all-star guy that's a guaranteed 25 plus a game. He's a mentor potentially for Victor Wembanyama. He shores up the small forward position, which has been a glaring hole for us the last couple of years. I think you have to pull the trigger.
Yeah. I definitely would be open to it, but I'm also open to this from Jay. He says, "Would you trade both
Ha!
2025 draft picks, the Hawks 2026 with Devin for a number 1 pick to get Cooper?" And I'm going to be honest, Ethan, I like this one more than the KD.
That one's great too. I don't know, man.
Dor Here, let me pause. Doria the Exploria says it's only 1 year of KD, by the way, so he's giving us a little
I
clarification
think
there.
Katie would love San Antonio, if I'm being honest with you.
Well, remember the Warriors
We
signing?
almost had him.
The team. Yeah. Yeah, that was another thing I thought about too. Like, I think he would want to come play here. I think he would wanna be a part of this team with Wemby. The first other thing that was gonna come to my mind, this is kinda sad, Ethan. I was gonna say he'd wanna play
Yeah,
for
that's
Pop, I'm
unfortunately
sure.
we wouldn't have
Obviously.
Pop, but he'd be around. Katie, he'd
Yeah,
be here.
right.
I don't know. I love Kevin Durant.
I think there's definite. Yeah, me too. I was gonna say I think that KD would definitely. I think he is. I don't think he would. I think he is interested in coming here.
I know the reports are saying that he wants to go to a contender. with Kevin Durant, I don't know if that immediately makes us a contender, but it definitely makes the aspirations a lot higher for everybody on the team,
Yeah,
including the front office, who would then have to
it ups
start
the
yeah,
ante.
who would then have to start really analyzing, "Okay, Devin, if you're not here, if you're not ready, it's time to go. Bye. We'll trade you for maybe a guy that only has 3 years with us, but is gonna impact winning immediately." Same for
Yeah.
Keldon. We start making more aggressive moves in free agency as well, and maybe we are a contender, but because you can never put a cap on where Victor will be next year or the year after, right? Like
Yeah.
we thought he would be good, but I think he surpassed our expectations even this year.
You could make that argument for
Same for
Steph
Stephon.
too. I know Victor's an enigma, like, he's different, but
Yeah,
still, I mean, everything that you're saying, that lines up with Steph as well.
and sort of kind of Jeremy Sohan too. Like if you were to play him in his natural
Yeah,
position next to a guy like Kevin Durant and Victor,
like you said, the Larry
oh
Markkinen.
my god, like how much does that open up his game? You know what I mean? And maybe that means Chris Paul decides, okay, I'll come back for one more year, veteran minimum, put him on the bench, right? Just shores up that second unit as well. So I'm completely behind KD, and also I think he would sign. Maybe this is just me as a Spurs fan not seeing reality. I think
Mhm.
once he got here, he would stay here.
Interesting, interesting. I could see that. I mean, I think if KD came, I think he'd wanna finish out his career here for sure. Um, but yeah, that is the 1 year thing, that is something that I didn't think about either, but that would kinda give you flexibility if it doesn't work out too, but anyways, that's a whole nother conversation that we can kinda get into more in the off season. But the one thing I wanna clarify just before we leave that conversation, when I said KD is interested, I don't mean, like, obviously, I don't know Kevin Durant, like, I
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that I'm sure most stars around the league are interested in playing with
right.
Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox. That was the point I was trying to make. I just wanted to clarify that before, like you said,
Shoot,
somebody in the
I forgot
comments
about
is like,
Fox.
how do you how do you know for sure that he wants to come here? It's like I'm just saying the stars are they're open. Like you said, De'Aaron Fox is
I
on the
forgot
table.
about De'Aaron Fox, dude. Maybe
Um,
we are a contender with KD on the team, low key.
no, that's what I was saying, dude. Like that would be crazy. I'll be a
Yeah,
super team. And as much as that's the most anti-Spurs thing ever, it would still be pretty crazy. But I'm also, like I said, out of those scenarios, I prefer the flag one. And then we have long-term dominance.
that's fair. Like
I guess we'd have long-term dominance either way, but still. I think that would be scarier long
that would
term.
be tough.
Well, Ethan, I know we do want to kind of wrap this episode up here in a couple of minutes, but I did kind of want to get to just some of the
Mhm.
other players that we haven't talked about yet. So we'll try to kind of maybe speed this up a little bit just so we can get through all of the guys. So we'll start off with Devin Vassell. Obviously, he is a big topic of conversation as of right now. And we were talking about him a little bit earlier. We just mentioned him in trade talks. But as much as we were talking about him in that way, Ethan, and as much as there's still inefficiency, which is the issue that we've been talking about, I still think this weekend's performance was an improvement from what we've seen. Now, when I say that, is it up to standard? No, I'm not saying that. But I do think this was a step in the right direction for Devin. But again, it's the same story, Ethan. As much as we're seeing some more shots fall, which is good, in comparison to what we were seeing, the inefficiency is still a struggle.
I really liked what he did in that first half against Memphis. That first half of that game, go rewatch it. That's what Devin does at his best. He was really attacking the rim, keeping it simple, and getting mid range buckets galore. Like I think he took 1 3 in the first half of that game. Then the second half started. He took his other 8 threes. He missed 7 of them. So
Yeah.
he finished 22% on that game. And then against OKC, he had 43%, 44% from the field. Like not bad for a shooting guard. It's a 6'5", 6'6" that can, put the ball on the floor, but 14%, 1 of 7 from three. So again, for me, the problem still persists as far as being able to play 4 quarters evenly well and shooting
Yeah.
from deep. Like that's why he's on the team. As bad as as bad as that sounds, you are on the team to hit threes. You are our shooting guard. Historically, the
Yeah.
Spurs shooting guard hits threes, and he has yet to find the bottom of the net.
The way that I thought this season would go for Devin as a catch and shoot
Yeah,
shooter has been completely
me too.
wrong. I have been completely wrong about that. And Yeah, I mean, there's just no other way to put it. I think that, there's some contextual things that contribute to it. But at the end of the day, Ethan, kind of one of the things that you were talking about in one of our recent episodes over the past couple weeks was that you kind of wanted him to take more twos than threes because when he was trying to force the threes, we kind of saw how the percentage was looking. And even here, when he's making the twos, we're still seeing the threes have the percentage that they have, as well as the inconsistency over the course of 4 quarters, where it's kind of like Devin has his success in spurts, rather than consistently, over 48 minutes. And it sucks because I feel like coming into this season, like at the end of last year, and obviously this is old news, but I felt like that's what I was seeing from Devin. Like you were really seeing him start to put 48-minute games together. So again, I think, obviously the fit and who he's playing next to and Stephon's emergence and adding De'Aaron Castle, like that all, has some effect. But at the end of the day, like you said, with what we're paying Devin, as well as the ability that I know Devin has, like regardless of what the numbers are, if you put him in a gym with nobody there, he's a sniper. And obviously, I understand you can say that about a lot of players in the NBA. You could say that about every player in the NBA. But I think the sentiment that I'm getting at that y'all are understanding, like he's a good shooter, but he's not executing. And I know execution matters with shooting. Like it's kind of a contradictive statement, but do you understand what I'm getting at here, Ethan?
Yeah, I do. He's not putting it. He's not putting it on the court when it actually matters. When the game time starts, he's fully capable of it.
Yeah.
When we were losing games the last 2
Yes.
years, he was that. He was that for us. He was a sniper. You know what? I'm curious what his actual percentage was. Let me go check that out year to year.
Yeah. Maybe it's lower than we think, but still, I think even if it is lower than we think, Ethan, like I think everybody would agree that his
Mhm.
execution has tailed off
Let
this
me put it this
season.
way. As a rookie, he averaged 5 points on 35% from 3, then 12 points at 36%, 18 points at 39%, 19 points last year at 37%, and this year is 15 at
Wow.
33%, which is technically, I know, completely different number of takes, but technically worse than Jeremy Sohan at 34%.
Wow. That's crazy to think about.
12, 18, 19. Not 40%, but an efficient clip at more volume. He took 7 threes 2 years ago and 6.6 last year. Now he's taking 6.3. And then also his field goal percentage last year was 47%. This year it's 42.8.
Yeah, man.
It could,
Like I said, this weekend
it
was
was.
better. Like I do want to give him some credit, but we still are searching for that full 48-minute complete game on this roster.
Only time will tell. We will continue to analyze as black and white as we can, Jude.
Mhm. But again, one thing I will reiterate, Devin, if you ever watch this, bro, we're rooting
Y-
for you, man. Like we want you to be a part of the team for the long term.
Right on.
Okay. The next guy that we will get to, who is kind of in this same category, is Keldon Johnson. And if you looked at the box score last night, obviously it doesn't jump out to you, and it kind of looks like a drop off. And maybe I'm making excuses here for Keldon, Ethan, but I kind of give him a little bit of a pass last night. Not just because of some of the foul calls, but also for what he contributed, not scoring the ball in the rebounds and the assists, as well as the other guys last night. There were multiple guys, I believe, who kind of had kind of high scoring games. So I think that also contributed. But in the Memphis game, another consistent performance that we've been seeing as of late. Yes, it was a little bit under 50% from the field, but still 6 for 13 overall. So not atrocious, and 2 for 3 from three. You would like to see him do a little bit better than 1 for 4 from the line. But 15, 6, and ones all across the board in a win in 30 minutes for Keldon. I think that's kind of what we were asking for him, at the bare minimum. But again, not to just take over all of this, Ethan, but my thoughts on Keldon from this weekend. I didn't see the Memphis game, so I want to hear your perspective on that. But I'm good with this weekend from Keldon. Yes, it's not a 20-point games like we've been seeing, but I still felt like he played well.
Yeah, the Memphis game, I thought he was real solid, really, really solid. And the things that don't show up on the stat sheet, His leadership, which we continue to talk about, is something that you can't really put a value on. He was yelling at guys even from the bench, like we need to get back, we need to play physical, we need to get rebounds. Like there were multiple instances where he stood up. I don't know exactly what he said because I can't hear, but he like said something, and he was clearly frustrated with the guys on the court because they allowed an
Mhm.
easy second chance point for Memphis or gave up a wide open three, and he was disgruntled at that. So you'll love to see that from him. And then and just so when you play against a team like Memphis, you have to bring the physicality, you have to bring the pain, and that's what he does. Right, he got a jump ball where it's kind of like Stephon Castle, where he was not going to just give the ball up to the other team. He was going to try and maintain that momentum, and it does become a mind game at points when you play a team that is as physical as Memphis. And Keldon was definitely a key component to kind of keeping that rhythm up for the team.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, Ethan. I know we gotta wrap up here soon, but I know the people wanna get their thoughts on this, or get our thoughts on this, and I know you actually you wanna talk about this. I just know you do. Okay, so we're gonna go
Okay,
rapid fire. CP3.
solid. I mean, he's 40 years old.
But
Yeah,
solid, yeah. I know we don't have the numbers up right now, but we didn't talk about these guys last time, so I wanted to get to them. Harrison Barnes.
great. I think Harrison's value is something that you can't really measure. But as far as being a 3-point sniper from the corner, he was that against OKC, especially in the first half. And he really helped us propel. I know we ended up losing, but in that first half, he was a big component as to why we were up so big in this and at the end of the first.
I think he gets forgotten about when we think about next season because he's on the roster still. And honestly, like when we talk about potentially bringing in KD or just pushing for the playoffs, like having Harrison Barnes as a rotation player, whether that's on the starter or the bench, like I want him at one of our forward positions. Whether it's the 4 or the 3 in the starting lineup or off the bench next season. Like I want to keep him, even if he turns into a bench
I
guy.
would agree with that statement for sure.
De'Aaron Fox,
Uh, Better.
better.
I mean, he's still not as explosive, like, off the screen as maybe I had anticipated, but you have to take context into this, and so I'm gonna give him the benefit of
Hmm.
the doubt, but he's clearly, next to Stephon, the best player on the team, and he hit the big shot at the end of it all to beat Memphis, so you gotta give him credit where credit is due.
Last time we were talking about the inefficiency, I know you could maybe point to sub 50% field goal percentage again, but I think it was an improvement for De'Aaron. And again, I'm really just kind of giving him a pass for this year. If next season we continue to see this, like we said last episode, we'll criticize it. But as of right now, I'm just giving him a little bit of a leeway, and shout out to him for getting a
Yep.
game winner in his first game in San
I didn't even
Antonio,
think about
Ethan.
that, yeah. He
Me
set the tone
either,
for
dude.
Frostbank.
Hell yeah. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Okay. Champagne.
Coming back a little bit. He had a rough streak there, but these last couple of games, like he was actually hitting some threes and putting the ball on the floor, especially against Memphis. I think he had like, yeah, I have it here in front of me. He had 14 points and had the highest plus
Yeah.
minus on the team. So shout out Champagny.
And before he got ejected,
Yeah,
which
I'm fine with that.
I'm good with that. I'm down with that. I love to see that from Champagny. Haven't seen that from Champagny. I think he was on his way in 12 minutes with
Yeah.
8 points and kind of around there. He was well on his way to having the same thing. So kind of the last time we talked about Champagny, it was like 3 out of 5 games with the 2 kind of offers
Hmm.
in between. I know he got ejected, but it looked like some consistency getting put there together for Julian. So loved what I saw out of him there. Finally, this is the last one, Ethan, now that he's officially on the team. Bismack Biyombo.
I think I pretty much covered Bismack at the beginning of this video. I mean, what can you expect from him? But exactly what he did against Memphis and OKC. Gets a couple of boards, plays physically. I think he had 18 minutes. Yeah, 18 minutes in both of them. Set some good picks, but you can't expect the world from this guy. He is only 32 years old, but in terms of the NBA for a guy his size, like he's up there.
Mhm. After I asked that, I realized I was like, "Oh, that's right. We talked about this in the beginning." So,
No, you're good.
sorry about that. But we appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us today. We will be back at some point next or this week. Probably y'all will see that. If we're not, then we'll at least see you next week. But I think we'll probably be back sometime this week to recap the game tomorrow night, as well as kind of just talk about these player evals, look forward to the weekend, all that stuff. No Steph Castle tomorrow
Mm,
night, Ethan. So probably is going to be a
yep,
rough game, but definitely, this is a game, Devin Vassell,
it's your
bro.
time.
I want you to get just give me 20 plus on efficient shooting, and we'll come on here and be like, "This was great."
Dude, it's the Nets. Like, if we have a chance to win, this is gonna be one of them. So, please.
Oh my goodness. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you guys enjoyed. Follow us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero to stay updated. We appreciate